When my new cybernetic interface neurobrain goes online, life as we know it will be over. Where once a city employed and was victim to the whims of 10,000 civil servants, neurobrain can never go on strike, will not call in sick, and does not need a coffee break every 3.25 hours. The cerebral cortex can both process information and learn from its mistakes, but a computer is quicker and more reliable than the human brain. So, why not have the best of both worlds? A brain married to a computer.
I have great hopes for Metronet. A supercomputer that will power this city into a future that not only has a silver lining, but will work better and cost less.
Cause of death.
Well, offhand, I have to say he died because somebody removed his brain.
What, like some kind of satanic ritual or something?
No. This wasn't your usual axe him up, hack him up, psycho torture murder. This is the work of a doctor.
He signed the release forms when he joined the force. Legally, he's dead. We can pretty much do what we want.
He's a machine. He doesn't have a memory. He has a program.
When he was arrested 5 years ago by RoboCop, he suffered severe damage to his face in a toxic accident of his own making.
So what you're saying is, he wants revenge.
No, he wants RoboCop.
Now, you wouldn't have got me out of there if you didn't want something.
How right you are. And what I want is to give you an opportunity to go down in history as the man who killed RoboCop.
See you in hell, RoboCop!
I was able to preserve his organics, but it'll cost a fortune to bring him back online. And according to the guy on the right, OCP's not paying.
You see, that is not a man. That is a machine. And the machine belongs to OCP.
Murderers!
Did you hear that?
From this moment forward, I control the destiny of Delta City. I control Neurobrain. Neurobrain controls your Metronet, and Metronet controls, well, everything.
Doc! We got big trouble. Wait! No, this is important. RoboCop is being put back online. I need you to help me figure out how to monkey with this. Shut up!
Thank you for your cooperation.
In March 1994, RoboCop the TV series made its premiere on Canadian and American TV. It didn't make its way to the UK until a year later, first turning up on satellite TV, and then shortly afterwards to regular terrestrial broadcast on ITV. The ratings in the States proved disastrous. RoboCop fans were disappointed with the show's attempts to appeal to family viewing, and in many parts of the USA, it was broadcast way too late for its desired audience. So many people missed it when it was first shown. Outside Canada and the US, it did prove more successful in international markets, but the average viewing figures never encouraged the networks to commission a second season. The 90-minute pilot and a few episodes did make it to VHS, and in Japan, roughly half the series was put on Laserdisc, but tracking down all of them will prove challenging and expensive. It did eventually arrive on DVD, and you can now stream it on Amazon Prime, but only in the UK. Toy Island introduced a line of toys when the show first aired, a selection based on the characters and a number of vehicles. I did have a few of the figures and the car, which I got way before it aired in the UK. I was a bit confused at first with its packaging. It said RoboCop the series, which I wasn't aware of. It was the same situation I had in the early 90s, seeing RoboCop 3 video games and there was no movie to be seen. The early 90s were proving very difficult for Orion Pictures. They had too many films flop at the box office and were falling into financial troubles. Dances with Wolves and Silence of the Lambs increased their cash flow, but too many investments had crippled their profits. They needed to take advantage of their existing properties for a quick short-term gain. RoboCop was key to their plan. The movie was a huge hit in '87. They really wanted a sequel and planned RoboCop 2 and 3 for a 1990 and 91 release. RoboCop 2 was attacked by the critics for being too violent, and the movie's tone didn't match the quality of the first film. It didn't set the box office alight, and come RoboCop 3, things fared far worse for Orion. The studio wanted to appeal to a younger market, to help boost profits, and the film's violence was heavily toned down for a PG-13 rating. Due to Orion's financial troubles, the film sat on the shelf for 2 years, and when it finally hit the big screen, it was too late. The movie bombed, and many felt this was the end of RoboCop. Orion Pictures received a $500,000 cash infusion for TV licensing rights to Canada's Sky Vision Entertainment. This allowed access to co-production treaties and possible partnerships with other countries. The production for a RoboCop series was set up in Canada, and they filmed in Toronto and Mississauga during the start of winter. You'll notice throughout the series it looks super cold. You can visibly see the actors freezing their tits off, and they often had to melt the snow to clear the set. Stephen Downing, who produced the show MacGyver, handled the series production. Downing said MacGyver was a similar hero to RoboCop, a loner who fights against injustice, using his wits and humour to get him out of every situation possible. Downing further explains, he has the judgment and mechanical skill to effectively apply reasonable force in all situations. Via the RoboVision effect, we can see RoboCop make conscious choices not to use excessive force when alternatives exist in a controlled situation. If you are a big fan of RoboCop, Downing's views on Robo and his comparisons to MacGyver are a bit ill-judged, and you can see creatively his views on the character sent the show in the wrong direction. Sky Vision was in negotiations with Peter Weller, hoping the original RoboCop star would return, but this did not come to fruition, so they asked Robert Burke, who played Robo in Part 3, but he felt a younger actor should take on the job. They held auditions in Canada, and Richard Eden showed an interest. Richard had won a Daytime Emmy Award for his role on Santa Barbara, and he still acts today but focuses more on work behind the camera. Richard Eden had to fit into Peter Weller's RoboCop 2 outfit. The suit was slightly modified for Richard, and ended up being far heavier, weighing a total of 95 pounds. Richard on some occasions spent 12 hours in the suit, and if you do the math, he has portrayed RoboCop the longest on screen. RoboCop still carries his gun in his right leg, but he now has additional capabilities. The gun fires a tiny identification tag, encoded with the time of the tagging. RoboCop's left leg carries devices called Suspect Containment Alternative Devices. These devices include an inflatable balloon that traps people inside a boat or against a wall in a small room. It ends up looking like an inflatable beanbag. He has more features with his mask and operating system. It can enhance audio or double check if someone is lying. So he uses these features more often to solve crimes, instead of going the entertaining route of blowing the criminals to bits. 10 scripts were ready for production when principal photography ended on the pilot. Each episode cost in the region of $1.25 million each, with the pilot costing $5 million, and it was shot on 35mm. They spent roughly 8 days shooting each episode, and had a second unit team running simultaneously. Delta City was still on the drawing boards in the original RoboCop film. With the show being set 4 to 5 years after the first movie, Delta City is now complete, and it now towers over the decaying old Detroit. After its construction, OCP turned their backs on old Detroit, allowing rogues to run wild. The police department is underfunded and unmanned. OCP focuses on the future, represented by Delta City and its new Neurobrain. The police headquarters of Old Detroit, Metro South, represents a crossover between old and new. The basement of the police station contains a state-of-the-art lab where scientist maintenance man Charlie Lippencroft services RoboCop. For copyright purposes, all the main characters except RoboCop Alex Murphy had their names changed. Anne Lewis is now Lisa Madigan, and the old man is the chairman, and so on. For the same copyright reasons, they could not use Ed 209 or make any reference to the robot. For the rest of the cast, we have Yvette Nippar playing Officer Lisa Madigan, who was promoted early on to detective of the Metro South Police Station. She worked with Murphy before his transformation into Robo, and knows the secret pain Murphy feels. She helps him keep an eye on Nancy and Jimmy Murphy, but honours Alex's request not to reveal the truth. One thing that bugs me about her is her bloody long hair. Cut that hair please, it looks ridiculous. Blue Mancuma plays Sergeant Stanley Parks, the Watch Commander. He's very much like Sergeant Reed in the movies, but is a big softie in the show and doesn't really show any aggression and rarely stamps his authority. Blue did return to the RoboCop franchise to play as Reed in the Alpha Commando cartoon show. Andrea Roth plays Diana Powers. The series introduced a supercomputer that manifests itself as a hologram. The hologram takes the form of the woman whose brain powers the machine. Like RoboCop, she too has been changed from a human being into a machine. She is killed in the pilot episode, and from then on she helps RoboCop with his investigations and helps him gain access to secret information. Only 3 people know of Diane's existence within the neurobrain computer: her killer Millardo, RoboCop and the chairman. David Garner plays the OCP chairman. This role is equivalent to that of the old man in the original RoboCop movie. Gardner plays his role with sensitivity and insight. The chairman is not a typical evil corporate bureaucrat, such as the old man in RoboCop 2. He again, like the sergeant, is a bit of a softie, and is always supportive of the police station and RoboCop. Sarah Campbell plays Gadget, the station mascot, and the adopted, insightful daughter of Station Sergeant Parks. RoboCop 3 introduced the idea of a little girl being friends with RoboCop, and that proved unsuccessful, so I'm not sure why they continued with that idea. Alex's estranged wife, Nancy Murphy, is a recurring character, and his son, Jimmy. Murphy learned that even though he spared his family's grief knowing he's now a cyborg, their problems are far from over. One episode they have to deal with going on welfare. Exciting times, people. Nancy meets RoboCop in a couple of episodes, but remains unaware he is her husband. RoboCop also interacts with his father and mother. His father Russell comes to help Robo in 2 episodes, and is the only one to find out his true identity. There are a number of reoccurring villains, most of them being corrupt OCP employees, and they aren't worth discussing at great length, but for those that play the biggest threat to RoboCop, we have Pudface Morgan, played by James Kidney. He is similar to the melted character Emil from the first film. He constantly wants to get rid of RoboCop and blames him for his disfigurement. James does perform on screen without his makeup in the episode Trouble in Delta City. We also have Cliff D. Young as Dr. Gray Z. Millardo, a paranoid psychopathic prima donna. Some of you may remember Cliff from the Flight of the Navigator movie. He plays David's father. Dr. Craig creates the Metronet and decides to use a human brain to power it. His performance is very electric and over the top. He shows signs of being completely bonkers and threatening, but with it being a family show, it's mostly played for laughs. But I must not forget Roddy Piper, who plays as Commander Cash's creator, and pretends to be him to take revenge on, you guessed it, OCP. The outfit he wears is quite possibly one of the worst costumes I've seen on TV and film. The series was edited using Video Toaster, supplied by NewTek, which is a company that is still around today. They basically provide the client with video editing facilities and visual effects work. Video Toaster was software originally developed for the Commodore Amiga. It gave people the opportunity to edit digitally, instead of cutting film or using high-resolution tape. With the show's high budget, the quality of the visual effects were extremely good for the time. They took advantage of Lightwave 3D, which was developed by NewTek, that could run with Video Toaster. I believe this software was also used to create Kane's CGI face for RoboCop 2. There are a large number of computer-generated effects in the show. They do their job and obviously look very dated today, but for a TV show in the mid-90s it would have been impressive to see. There was additional digital work by the company Animation Video Special Effects Limited. They did the digital mats to represent Delta City, and also video effects for RoboCop's vision and the neurobrain Diana. These special effects used look like that of a feature film. There are many huge explosions throughout the show, really impressive stuff that gives this series an extra level of quality. My favourite was seeing RoboCop throw an explosive on a gate and shooting it. You see this great slow-mo shot of the explosion, and he just stands there and takes the blast. The show featured short cartoon promos for the character Commander Cash, which is used to sell OCP products to children such as toys and cereal. The animation was handled by Nelvana, based in Canada. They are still in business today, animating and distributing many popular cartoons. The episode Commander Cash vs RoboCop features a comic panel designed for Commander Cash's backstory. The show's producers did bring over the classic RoboCop theme from the '87 movie, but it's arranged to sound a bit more heroic. It does sound a little cheaper in its quality, going with keyboards to simulate the sound of an orchestra. The composers credited on the show are John Stroll and Kevin Gillies. Most of the time the score does its job well, but there are moments often during the action scenes where it sounds a bit hokey and out of place with the rest of the show's soundtrack. There was an album published which featured 95% rock music that I don't think even featured in the show. I don't recall ever hearing most of these tracks. The main song is called A Future to This Life. It pops up during the end credits on the episode The Human Factor and continues to be used throughout the remaining episodes, and on the last 3 it ends with the cheesiest music video. RoboCop walks on set and stands there looking totally confused as Joe Walsh and Lita Ford belt out a power ballad to his face. It's so funny. The music isn't awful, but it's not really suitable for RoboCop. Going from this big percussive sound with synth mixed in to a power ballad is totally the wrong direction for RoboCop. Only one track on the album features the orchestral music from the show. It's a good track, but it's not worth buying the whole soundtrack just for that. If you love that type of music, then it's worth getting, but for me, it's something to avoid, I'm afraid. But if there was a complete score to this show, then yes, sign me up, I will certainly purchase a copy. Once the series had finished, many of the people involved thought they would be returning for a second season. Richard Eden was very tired from making it, but was more than happy to come back to continue with the character, but things weren't looking good. The ratings and poor scheduling resulted in the network cancelling a follow-up. They were hoping to continue with the relationship of RoboCop and his parents and rekindling his connection to his wife and child. I'm not sure if that was something RoboCop fans wanted to see, but this was seemingly the direction to expand upon Murphy's character. I suppose it would seem a logical continuation. In the '87 movie he discovered his true self again, so would he want to continue his previous life? The show tries to do that, and it's subjective as to whether it did its job or not. Now, after watching all 22 episodes, here is my list of ones I recommend and ones to avoid. The pilot episode, which is called The Future of Law Enforcement, is based on the intended sequel to RoboCop called The Corporate Wars by the writers Ed Neumeyer and Michael Miner. It was a rushed script done to please Orion, who were desperate for a sequel, but they could never finish it due to a writer's strike. The ideas from that script make an appearance in this pilot with the introduction of the MetroNet as a new AI to power the city, which uses a neuro brain. It was originally set 20 years after the first film, and RoboCop has been powered down for years and is woken up again to find himself in this future world that was very alien to him. But this pilot is basically set 4 to 5 years after the first film and ignores the events in RoboCop 2 and 3, despite borrowing a couple of elements from those movies. The pilot is recommended viewing because it sets up the new characters and gives you the background to what's going on in the series. If you skip this, then you'll be confused by the appearance of the AI Diana. I don't think the pilot is that entertaining, and its 90-minute runtime is totally unnecessary. OCP have announced the arrival of new technology called MetroNet that is designed to run the city in a cost-effective way and help in apprehending criminals. The designer, Dr. Clay Malado, requires a human brain to make it work, but all his victims fail to sync with the software. He decides to use the OCP executive Chip Chaikin's assistant to power the system after she demonstrates her efficiency and intelligence. RoboCop's new arch-nemesis Pudface Morgan has captured some victims and demands Robo make an appearance. RoboCop comes to save the day and apprehends Pudface. RoboCop learns from the young girl Gadget that she witnessed the disappearance of one of Dr. Clay's victims, which launches the investigation with his partner Madigan into his practices. Now, this episode is basically the same length as the movie, and it can be viewed as one, but in terms of enjoyment level, it's average to say the least. RoboCop is taken out of the picture for a while due to being attacked by Pudface Morgan, and it's entirely focused on Dr. Clay. There is little action to take in until RoboCop is back on his feet, and he takes out the gang who have set up camp at OCP. Despite some good stunt work, it's like watching the A-Team, no one dies. The co-writer of the episode, Michael Miner, has said some of the critics praised its storyline and said it was better than RoboCop 2. No, I'd happily watch RoboCop 2 over this any day. The pilot has some interesting ideas, but it's restricted heavily by its tone and its attempts to appeal to younger viewers, and the introduction of Gadget is a big no-no for me. Seeing RoboCop hold her little hand reeks of RoboCop 3 and its failed approach at kid-friendly entertainment. RoboCop, you don't hold that hand, you crush it. Thank you. In Prime Suspects, a TV tabloid host calls RoboCop the tool of Satan, and he is turning the public against him. RoboCop finds himself blamed for a crime he didn't commit. after the arrogant host is murdered, shot dead by specific bullets found in RoboCop's gun, which indicates he is guilty. RoboCop goes on the run and Madigan tries to prove he is innocent, and discovers that the creator of many of RoboCop's parts has his own copies of RoboCop's gun and helmet. This episode was based on the Prime Suspect Dark Horse comics, which ran for 4 issues, and also borrows some elements from the film The Fugitive. This episode has some really good visuals and special effects, but its story is what makes it work and will keep you engaged to the end. The human factor is Richard Eden's favourite episode. A disgruntled ex-OCP employee threatens to destroy Delta City with a nuclear weapon. Russell Murphy, RoboCop's father, who helped put this guy in jail 12 years ago, helps RoboCop defeat him, despite the chairman establishing a new elite anti-corporate terrorism squad. Russell comes to appreciate the efforts of RoboCop, and he believes he is a damn fine cop. In the episode Corporate Raiders, which isn't really a good episode, but it has RoboCop team up with his father again. At the end, Alex Murphy gets his helmet knocked off, and his dad finally sees him. He gets very emotional and upset, and RoboCop pleads with him not to tell the family. It's a nicely directed sequence, but the dialogue is proper cheesy, so if you're not in the right frame of mind, you may end up laughing. In the episode Heartbreakers, RoboCop's true identity is discovered by a ruthless OCP executive. The enemies in the episode use a new weapon that causes cardiac arrest in its victims by destroying the heart muscle with a microwave beam. RoboCop's wife Nancy Murphy is kidnapped and he is forced to steal a top secret weapon. RoboCop must break his own directives to steal the weapon. It's the first time you see him override a directive. Murphy comes close to revealing his true identity to his wife, but stands by his rules to protect and serve, and it wasn't the right time to reveal the truth. The episode Nano opens with an explosive bus chase feeling like something out of the film Speed, and Madigan crashes and breaks her neck and spine, which is a very dark opening for an episode. Madigan fears she will be disabled for the rest of her life, and RoboCop is struggling to comfort her, needing to find a way to save her. Metronet and Neurobrain are crippled by nanites, which are being used by criminals to gain control of the system. The nanites can also be used to repair Madigan's spine. This episode displays Yvette's best performance, as she breaks down due to the possibility of being paralysed for life, and RoboCop seems powerless. Public Enemies is the last episode of the series, and has a nice send-off. All the villains from the pilot appear again to take revenge on RoboCop, kill the President of the United States, and take down the OCP chairman once and for all, with a remote-controlled bomb. The writers end the show with a positive finale that ensures if a second series didn't get commissioned, then it could end without having to tie up any loose ends. RoboCop confronts the President and tells her that he is here to protect the people of Delta City, and will always be around if a crime is happening. Now, there aren't really any episodes that are just plain awful. The episode Mother's Day focuses on Gadget and Jimmy Murphy. He helps her find her biological mother. Any episode that focuses on kids, I recommend you skip. 95% of children can't act their way out of a paper bag, and these young actors are prime examples. So that episode is best avoided, and the rest really can be lumped into that category of just being boring. There is a lot of repetition in the series. It's always the same scenario, just spun in a slightly different way. It tends to be a corrupt OCP staff member who is abusing the law to make a profit, but to continue with their crime they need to get rid of RoboCop. They recycle Pudface Morgan like 6 times, and it just results in the same plot device. It's not that these episodes are unwatchable, you just find yourself failing to get involved in the story because you've seen it already. The key ones I've mentioned really push to do something different. They also incorporate similar tactics with their plot structures, but there is something to be invested in. I first saw the show back in the mid-90s. I had cable TV and saw the pilot when it first came on Sky 1. I was coming up to 13 years old at the time, and by that point I had seen all the RoboCop films, and only recently saw the third film, which disappointed me. I had some clue the show would follow a similar path of zero violence, and being broadcast at 8 PM, things weren't looking good. I sat through the pilot and found it forgettable. I didn't feel compelled to continue and never saw the rest of the series. When you have many episodes which are a bit boring to watch, you're not going to sit through 4 advert breaks to watch the whole episode. So anytime I caught it by accident, I would usually tune out after 15 minutes. Over the years, I had largely ignored the show, and once I saw it had been released on Blu-ray. Don't get your hopes up though, it's not a HD transfer, it just has all the episodes on one disc. I felt it was time to revisit the show and give it a second chance. Some people still appreciate it today, and from what I've read online, it has a cult following, and the hardcore RoboCop fans appreciate Richard Eden's portrayal. It was a strange experience at first returning to the show, having vague memories of seeing it on TV, and once I sat through all of it, I'd actually seen more than I remembered. Many people still dismiss the show down to its strict attempts to reduce the violence. Now, people still die in the show. The villains often kill people, or for example the episode Heartbreakers, innocent people suffer from heart attacks, so it's not totally void of any violence or death, but no one dies due to RoboCop's actions. If they get killed, it's due to their own incompetence. RoboCop will often punch people, but anytime he uses his gun, he shoots the weapons out of their hands, or shoots an explosive to gain entrance to a villain's hideout, or tags them so he can track them down later. His additional weapons are mostly laughable to an adult. They are just lame attempts to stop a bad guy. It's kind of like the weapons Batman would use. It's perfect for him, but on RoboCop it just seems way out of place. The show does attempt to bring over the satire that was a strong part of the films, with the use of the adverts, media breaks and the Commander Cash cartoons, which seem inspired by the RoboCop 3 Johnny Rehab commercials, but because of its direction for family viewing, the adverts don't have the same effect. The movie and their use of commercials like Nukem or Magnavolt had this dark, violent tone to them, and it was a spoof on society, whereas in the TV show they seem heavily watered down and don't have the same effect, very much like the media break reports, which struggle to be funny and fall into being a weak carbon copy. The cast of the show is certainly a mixed bag. Richard Eden gets all the movements right for RoboCop. He puts a lot of effort into copying Peter Weller, but does overdo it. He'll take forever to turn his bloody head, and they amp up the sound effects for his movements, so sometimes it's borderline overkill.
My turn.
His voice generally works for the most part, but can sound a bit too robotic. I think it should have been lighter, like at the end of the first movie when he discovers his true identity. It's always bugged me since the first movie that all the sequels and spin-offs like the series forget about him rediscovering his humanity. It's like they flip the reset switch and he sounds like a robot again. When they take his mask off, I think they overdid it with the makeup. He looks super pasty. They did improve his flesh tones later on in the series, but the first half he is very pale. I'd put that mask back on, Richard, you are freaking me out a bit here. Cheers. I'm not a fan of the Madigan character, even though it's supposed to be Lewis. She doesn't seem to be written in a similar way. Maybe it's the performance from Yvette, but I don't really get any enjoyment from her, and her character really dominates the show when RoboCop is not on screen. You find yourself losing interest as the show attempts to focus on its supporting characters. As soon as Gadget or Jimmy and his mum Nancy are on screen, you're just desperate for the show to move on because those characters add nothing but boredom. You've tuned in for RoboCop, not his boring family. Pudface Morgan is a very weak villain. James Kidney I think is a very good actor, but he seems to play him like a third-rate Freddy Krueger, whilst looking like a generic Dick Tracy gangster. It's a shame the show focused too heavily on corrupt OCP employees. It really needed another robot to fight against, or having something similar to Ed 209 would have been ideal, just to throw in more science fiction. It's like the old days of the George Reeves Superman show. He would just end up battling gangsters instead of supervillains. It gets repetitive very quickly. Now let's focus on the positive aspects of this show. All the directors involved have done their homework in their attempts to homage Paul Verhoeven's style and camera setups. The show does feel like it belongs in that world of the '87 movie. The production designer has made a conscious effort to show familiar landscapes and buildings to fit that old Detroit design, despite the show being shot in Canada. The feature films always had this great sense of heat, like everyone was sweating and there was this sense of danger outside OCP. It wasn't a safe world. But with this show being shot in the winter, it does look like it's a perpetual cold, and it seems too clean and non-threatening. It's way too clean cut for RoboCop. The series is well produced on a technical level, and I highly appreciate their efforts. There is some great stunt work that is equal to a feature film, but it does rely on too much cardboard boxes for cars and bad guys to smash into. But alas, I think they were fighting a losing battle. RoboCop has proven time and time again that he is a character that belongs in an adult world. He is not suited for daytime entertainment. As much as kids love the character, he is not designed for them. His world is very much a violent and corrupt one, and when you dilute that, it becomes something else, and he seems redundant. In zapping out the violence, RoboCop is left with not much to do. Since RoboCop 3, the studio's attempts to avoid an R or 18 rating have never proven successful. It's always been disastrous with critics and fans. It doesn't matter how much money you throw at it, you are going to lose despite the good intentions. I don't think the show should be forgotten or pushed aside because of its reduced violence and gore. I say watch some of the episodes I recommended and you will notice there is some good stuff in them, but just be in the mindset that it's not violent, and if you can accept that, you will get some enjoyment out of it. Richard Eden is a good RoboCop. It's just a shame he couldn't pull out his gun occasionally and blow his victims to pieces like in the movies. This may sound a bit sadistic, but hey, that's what RoboCop does, stamping out crime with a few blasts to the head or chest.
In the heart of the darkness, the light still burns. It takes you back there to a memory of her. In the heart of the darkness, she's still there. She's always holding on to what you share. Is anybody out there gonna take your hand? Hold you close, help you understand. There's a future to this life.
And you, mister, better watch your step. She's got the hots for you. She said that she thinks you are yummy.
Yummy?
If you enjoyed the video, you can find more on my YouTube channel, and also you can follow me on Twitter. If you want to help support the channel, you can donate through Patreon and receive monthly perks such as updates on the latest news on my channel, early access to reviews and commentaries before they go live on YouTube. Even the smallest donation can help keep this channel going. Thank you.